The colony world of New Terra hung in the darkness like a blue stone. Commander Lucas Hart stood at the military command center, looking at the star maps projected on the wall. Dozens of blinking lights showed veteran ships moving closer to human space. Everyone in the room knew what those lights meant. War was coming, and humanity was not ready. Lucas was a big man with hard lines in his face. He had spent 30 years defending human colonies, and he had learned a painful truth. The Galactic Council did not care about human survival. They cared about power, resources, and profit. Humans were weak in their eyes, and weak species did not deserve protection. The Galactic Council had formed 200 years ago when humanity first met other intelligent life. That moment should have been glorious. Instead, it became a lesson in humiliation. The Council was ruled by 5 ancient species with technology thousands of years more advanced than humanity's. The Veteran were among them, and they were brutal. In the Council chambers on the neutral station called Nexus Prime, Lucas had sat through countless meetings listening to alien leaders dismiss human concerns. When pirate attacks threatened human shipping lanes, the Council offered words instead of ships. When the Krell species stole human mining colonies, the Council suggested negotiation. When the Veteran openly looked at human territory with hungry eyes, the Council said nothing. "The humans are developing too slowly," one veteran counselor had said during the last meeting. "They do not have the strength for serious warfare. Perhaps they should focus on farming and trade instead of military ambition." Lucas had wanted to punch the alien in its scaled face. Instead, he had listened to the other counselors laugh. The young soldiers in the command center were watching him now. They wanted hope. They wanted to believe that their commander had a plan, that somehow humanity would survive what was coming. Lucas did not believe in lying to his people, but he also did not believe in crushing their spirits with harsh truth. "We are going to prepare," he said to the gathered officers. "The Veteran think we are soft. They think we will break like ice when they push hard enough. We are going to show them they are wrong." Captain Alexandra Price stepped forward. She was smaller than Lucas, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had been a pilot for 15 years and had the fastest reflexes in the human fleet. "How, sir?" she asked. "Our ships are 50 years behind theirs. Our weapons are weak compared to what they have. We cannot win a straight fight." "Then we do not fight straight," Lucas said. "We did not survive on Earth by being the strongest. We survived by being clever. We survived by never getting up. We survived by adapting when the world tried to kill us. The Veteran have had an easy life. Every problem they face gets solved with more power and more weapons. When those weapons stop working, they will not know what to do." Sergeant Nathan Gray, a younger man with intense eyes, nodded slowly. "You want us to use our world against them. Our knowledge of the terrain. Our improvised tactics." "Exactly," Lucas said. "The Veteran will come with their rules of battle and their organized forces. We will move like the creatures on Earth that survive in the harsh places. We will be fast, unpredictable, and we will hurt them in ways they do not expect." The room was quiet. Everyone knew the plan was dangerous. Everyone knew that many of them would not survive the coming war. But they also knew that if they did nothing, humanity would be crushed anyway. That night, Lucas sent a message to the Galactic Council. He requested military support, advanced weapons, and reinforcements. The reply came 3 days later. The Council would send inspectors to evaluate the threat level. No weapons. No ships. No soldiers. Lucas read the message in his private office and threw it against the wall. The truth was that humanity had never fit into the Galactic Council. They were too young as a species, too unpredictable, too resistant to the order that the ancient species preferred. The Council wanted the galaxy to run like a machine, with every species in its proper place. Humans were the loose gear that did not fit. Young soldiers from across the colony began arriving at the military training grounds. They were farmers, engineers, scientists, and workers. They had no formal military training, but they had something else. They had grown up on a harsh world. They had faced storms that could kill, earthquakes that could swallow cities, and predators that hunted for blood. They understood survival in ways that soft, comfortable aliens never would. Lucas put them through the hardest training he could create. He taught them to move silently through forests and canyons. He taught them to make weapons from simple materials. He taught them to think of the land itself as a weapon. He taught them that surrender meant death, and death was not the worst outcome. Slavery was worse. Watching their people destroyed was worse. So they would fight. Alexandra led flight training. She worked with the pilots until they could fly damaged ships, broken ships, ships held together with hope and wire. She taught them to use speed and knowledge instead of firepower. She showed them how to take down larger enemies by being faster and smarter. Months passed. The veteran ships continued their slow approach. The Galactic Council continued to do nothing. Lucas used every resource humanity had to prepare. He stripped civilian factories and turned them into weapons production. He took scientists off Earth research and put them to work on military technology. He prepared the population for the battle that was coming. The night before the attack, Lucas walked through the colony. He saw families sitting together, knowing they might not be together much longer. He saw children playing without understanding what would happen tomorrow. He saw older people who had lived through hard times on Earth, people who knew that survival sometimes meant standing and fighting. He stood on a hill overlooking New Terra and made a promise to himself. The Galactic Council thought humans were weak. The veteran thought humans would crumble. He was going to show them that they had made the biggest mistake of their lives. Lucas turned and walked back toward the command center. There was work to do. The war would start soon, and humanity would show the galaxy what relentless fury really meant. The attack came on a morning when the sky over New Terra burned red. Thousands of veteran ships descended from the darkness like locusts, their weapons firing before they had even reached the lower atmosphere. The ground shook. Buildings collapsed. People ran screaming through the streets. Lucas sat in the command center watching the red dots appear on his screens. There were so many of them. More than he had expected. More than anyone had expected. The Galactic Council's response came immediately. A message saying that humans should evacuate to safer worlds and allow the Council to handle negotiations. Lucas deleted the message without responding. All squadrons report in, he said over the communication system. One by one, the human pilots reported. Not all of them made it. Some ships had been destroyed on the ground before they could even launch. But those who survived were ready. Alexandra Price was in the lead fighter, a small, fast ship with limited weapons but excellent maneuverability. She had painted the nose with a wild design, something that the veteran would see as barbaric. She did not care. The veteran were here to destroy humanity anyway. A little barbarism would not make things worse. All pilots follow the plan, she transmitted. Do not fight in space. We do not have the firepower for that. We hit them in the atmosphere and then we disappear. We hit them where they are not expecting us. We hit them and we run. The first veteran attack wave came down hard. Their technology was overwhelming. One veteran warship had the firepower of 50 human fighters. But the veteran commanders expected traditional warfare. They expected human ships to stand and fight until they were destroyed. Instead, Alexandra's squadron used the planet itself. They flew down into canyons where the veteran ships could not follow without losing speed and maneuverability. They struck at transport ships and supply vessels instead of attacking the main military force. They damaged engines and stole supplies. They fought like predators, not like soldiers in a line. The veteran were confused. Their military had never faced an enemy that refused to fight fairly. In space, veteran ships had always crushed their enemies through sheer power. On this world, that power meant nothing. The aliens could not see their target. They could not maintain formation. Their rigid, ordered tactics fell apart by the end of the first day. The human defense force had lost 30% of its ships. But they had also damaged 12 veteran warships and destroyed dozens of transport vessels. The veteran commander sent a message demanding human surrender. Lucas sent back a simple response: "Come and take us." Sergeant Nathan Gray led a strike team deep into the occupied territory. His orders were to damage the veteran supply depot and then get out alive. What Nathan actually did was far more damaging. He and his team moved through the night, setting explosives at the power generators that supported the veteran forward base. When the explosions came, they came in a sequence. One explosion, then another, designed to keep the veteran confused and unable to respond effectively. The supply depot burned for hours. Millions of credits and equipment went up in smoke. The veteran had never experienced this kind of warfare. They had conquered worlds with overwhelming force before. They had never fought an enemy that operated without rules, without fear, and without any sense of military honor. Veteran soldiers began to report something that their commanders found hard to believe. The humans were not running away. Even when they were losing, even when they were surrounded, the humans fought harder. The humans were like animals with no sense of self-preservation. They would charge into impossible situations and somehow survive. Or they would die screaming and fighting, inspiring other humans around them to fight even harder. A human soldier named Marcus Webb became famous in the second week of the war. He was trapped in a burning building with 3 other soldiers and a group of civilians. A veteran patrol surrounded the building and demanded surrender. Marcus told the civilians to run to the back exit and told the other soldiers to cover them. Then he walked out the front door with a pistol and fought 6 veteran soldiers alone. He killed 3 of them. The 4, they killed him. But those 3 minutes gave the civilians time to escape. The story spread through the human forces like fire. If Marcus Webb could die fighting like that, then everyone else could fight like that too. The veteran commander realized that something was going very wrong with the invasion. His soldiers were becoming afraid of humans. Humans were supposed to be weak. Humans were supposed to surrender when faced with superior force. Instead, humans fought harder when they lost. It was against all logic. It was against all military doctrine. He decided to end this problem with brute force. He ordered a massive bombardment of New Terra's main city. The strike would be total. There would be no buildings left, no place for the humans to hide or fight from. Lucas watched the missiles coming on his radar and made his choice. He ordered the population to evacuate into the underground bunker system. Millions of tons of rock and concrete would protect them from bombardment. It would also trap them if the veteran decided to finish the job by sealing the tunnels. The bombardment came like the end of the world. Fire fell from the sky. The ground shook so hard that buildings collapsed like paper. The city that humans had built with their own hands was destroyed in hours. But the veteran commander was wrong about one thing. The humans were not trying to protect a city. They were trying to survive long enough to win. Every bomb that fell on empty buildings was a bomb that was not falling on a weapon factory deep underground. Every veteran soldier that died was a soldier that could not kill more humans. The war had entered a new phase. The veteran had shown their terrible power. Now the humans would show something that the veteran had never seen before. The veteran had weapons and technology, but humans had something older and more dangerous. Humans had nothing to lose and everything to prove. The battle for New Terra had really just begun. 3 months into the war, Lucas Hart knew they were losing. The veteran had lost hundreds of ships and thousands of soldiers, but humanity had lost far more. The population of New Terra had dropped from 5 million to just over 1 million. The outer colonies were gone. The mining stations were destroyed. All that remained was the main continent and a desperate population that refused to surrender. But something important was happening. Nathan Gray had discovered something that changed everything. Nathan led a team that had captured a veteran communications relay. The device was complex, filled with technology that humans did not fully understand. But a young engineer named Kevin Chen figured out what it did. The relay was the nerve center of the veteran command structure. Every order from the veteran commanders went through this system. Every report from veteran forces was processed here. If we can knock out their communications, Kevin said, we can make their forces act like a body without a brain. Lucas understood immediately. The veteran species was hierarchical. They had been ruled by strict order for thousands of years. Their military operated the same way. Orders came from above. Soldiers followed orders. There was no independent thinking. It was a system that worked perfectly when the communications stayed intact. But if the communications broke down, the veteran soldiers would be lost. Can you do it? Lucas asked Kevin. I can try, Kevin said. But I need to get close to their main command center. I need to plant something that will disrupt their frequencies without destroying the system. If we destroy it, they will just rebuild it. But if we jam it, they will think it is a technical failure. They will keep trying to fix it while their forces fall apart. Lucas approved the mission immediately. Nathan volunteered to lead the team that would protect Kevin while he did his work. The target was the veteran command ship, a massive vessel that hung in orbit above New Terra like a metal moon. Getting to the command ship meant flying directly into veteran territory. Alexandra put together a strike force of 12 fast fighters. They would create a distraction while Nathan and Kevin's team penetrated the ship itself. The plan was simple and likely to fail. But simple plans had kept humanity alive so far. The attack came at night. Alexandra's fighters came screaming in from multiple angles, hitting the veteran defensive perimeter with everything they had. The veteran response was immediate and overwhelming. 3 of Alexandra's fighters went down in the first minutes. But the rest kept firing, kept pressing forward, kept forcing the veteran to respond to the threat. That was when Nathan's team made their move. They had built a boarding shuttle from parts of captured veteran ships. The veteran sensors would recognize it as one of their own. The shuttle carried Nathan and 6 other soldiers, plus Kevin with his equipment. The shuttle docked with the command ship without being challenged. Nathan and his team moved through the corridors like ghosts. They had learned to move silently, to avoid detection, to take out guards with speed and precision. Kevin was not a soldier, but he moved with the same intensity. He knew that his work could change the outcome of the war. They reached the communications center on the lower decks. Kevin immediately began hooking up his equipment, a modified device that would send out false frequencies and disrupt the veteran transmissions. It would look like a system malfunction, something that would frustrate the veteran commanders, but not immediately reveal that they were under attack. That was when everything went wrong. A squad of veteran soldiers came down the corridor, already moving toward the communications center. Nathan did not hesitate. He charged forward with 2 other soldiers, using the narrow corridor to negate the veteran advantage in numbers. The fight was brutal and fast. A soldier named David Morris died in the first seconds, his body torn open by veteran weapons. But Nathan and the others kept pressing forward, kept fighting, kept dying if necessary. One by one, the veteran soldiers fell. One by one, the humans fell too. By the time the corridor was clear, Nathan had lost 3 soldiers. But Kevin was still alive. Kevin was still working. 10 more seconds, Kevin said, his fingers moving across the equipment. Veteran alarms began to wail through the command ship. The attack had been detected. Soldiers were pouring toward the communications center. Nathan set explosives at the corridor entrance, giving his remaining soldiers a few more seconds to escape. "Now," Kevin shouted. "It is done." They ran. The explosives detonated behind them, collapsing part of the corridor. They made it back to the boarding shuttle as veteran soldiers poured down the stairs. The shuttle detached and fired its engines, pulling away from the command ship, just as veteran weapons tore at its hull. In space, Alexandra saw the shuttle making its desperate escape. She threw her remaining fighters between the shuttle and the pursuing veteran ships, knowing she was probably throwing her own life away. But the shuttle made it. It limped back toward New Terra, damaged but alive, carrying Kevin and his team. The effect on the veteran forces was immediate. Their communications system crashed. Orders stopped flowing. The hierarchical structure that had controlled them for thousands of years simply disappeared. Suddenly, veteran soldiers had to think for themselves. They had to make decisions. They were not trained to do this. They were not built for this. In the human forces, the opposite was happening. Soldiers had been thinking for themselves since the war began. They had been making decisions, adapting, surviving. Now, freed from the burden of following orders, the veteran became confused and weak. Human attacks began to succeed where they had been failing. Supply lines collapsed. Veteran forces pulled back from territory they had conquered. The war started to shift. Veteran commanders realized too late what was happening. They had been defeated not by superior weapons, but by a weakness in their own nature. The humans had exploited that weakness with a simple device and the willingness to die. Morale in the human forces skyrocketed. The story of Kevin's mission spread through every unit. If one human could strike at the heart of the veteran command, then nothing was impossible. The humans had gone from the weak species that the galaxy looked down onto the warrior species that could not be broken. In the Galactic Council, news of the veteran communications failure began to change opinions. The humans were not just surviving. They were actually pushing back. They were actually winning. The war was far from over. Many humans would still die. Many veterans would still die. But everyone now understood that the outcome was no longer certain. Humanity was proving that weakness and strength were not what the Galactic Council thought they were. The underground bunkers were dark and crowded. Thousands of people lived in tunnels that had been carved from solid rock centuries ago. The air was stale. The food was rationed. The space was cramped. But the people were alive, and they were still fighting. It was in one of these bunkers that Lucas Hart made a decision that would change the course of the war. He called in a young officer named Lieutenant David Owen. David was intelligent, articulate, and he understood how to speak to people outside the military. David was also angry about what the Galactic Council had done. "I need you to do something very dangerous," Lucas said to him. David saluted and waited for orders. "The Galactic Council has ignored us. They sent no help. They sent no support. They have allowed the veteran to destroy our people. But we have something that might change their minds. We have proof that humans can fight. We have proof that we are not weak. But the Council needs to see that proof with their own eyes." Lucas handed David a data drive. On it were recorded messages from dying humans, from soldiers who had fallen, from people who had suffered. It showed the reality of the war. Not the cleaned-up version that official reports contained, but the raw, brutal truth. "I need you to get to a communication station and broadcast this to every council member," Lucas said. "I need you to speak to them. I need you to make them understand what is happening here. Can you do that?" David looked at the drive in his hand. He knew what this meant. Getting to a communication station meant infiltrating deep into veteran territory. Getting out meant doing it again. The chances of survival were almost zero. "Yes, sir," David said. "I will do it." David spent 3 days preparing. He gathered 3 other soldiers to help him. He studied the maps of the veteran base that controlled the communication station. He prepared the message he would broadcast. And he made peace with the fact that he was probably going to die. The infiltration was slower than Nathan's mission had been. They could not rely on speed because they needed to survive long enough to get the message out. They moved through the night, avoiding patrols, hiding when veteran soldiers passed close. It took them 6 hours to cross 3 miles of occupied territory. The communication station was heavily guarded. It was inside a reinforced facility that the veteran used to coordinate their operations. David and his team would have only minutes before the veteran overwhelmed them. They struck at night. The initial assault was fast and violent. David's team killed the guards at the entrance and fought their way inside. But by the 3rd corridor, the alarm had been raised. Veteran soldiers were moving toward them from every direction. One of David's soldiers, a woman named Lisa Chang, was killed clearing a corridor. Another, a man named Robert Hill, was killed fighting for the communication station entrance. David made a split-second decision. He left the last soldier, Marcus Webb, to hold the entrance and rushed into the station with the data drive. The communication equipment was complex, but David had studied the veteran systems. He knew what he needed to do. He jacked the data drive into the system and initiated the broadcast protocol. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the message started to transmit. David's voice went out across the galaxy. It was not a polished speech. It was not a formal address from a government official. It was the raw voice of a human soldier in a communication station. With veteran weapons firing outside the door, speaking the truth about what was happening on New Terra. "This is Lieutenant David Owen of the Human Defense Force," he said. "I am broadcasting from veteran-occupied territory. The Galactic Council has told you that humanity is weak. The Galactic Council was wrong. Humans are fighting. Humans are dying. Humans are refusing to surrender. And humans are winning." He described the battles. He described the soldiers who had died. He described the families that had been destroyed. But he also described something else. He described the courage it took to keep fighting. He described the moral strength that came from defending your home and your people. "The Galactic Council has abandoned us," David said, his voice steady even as bullets tore through the walls around him. "But we have not abandoned ourselves. We have chosen to fight. We have chosen to die rather than be conquered. And I am telling you now, across the stars, that humanity will not break." Outside the station, Marcus Webb was dying. He had been hit multiple times by veteran weapons. His body was covered in blood. But he still stood in the doorway, still firing his weapon, still buying time for David to transmit the message. David finished his broadcast. He could hear the sound of Marcus falling. He could hear the veteran soldiers breaking through the door. He made a choice. He drew his pistol and walked toward the door. He killed 2 veteran soldiers before they killed him. He died in the doorway, next to Marcus, both of them protecting something they knew was more important than their own lives. But David's message had been transmitted. It reached the Galactic Council. It reached every major communication hub in the known galaxy. It reached people on 1,000 worlds. And it changed everything. The message was raw. It was emotional. It was the absolute truth. It did not have the polish of official communications. It had something far more powerful. It had authenticity. Billions of people watched a human soldier stand in the face of overwhelming odds and speak the truth about his people. In the Galactic Council chambers, Debates that had raged for months suddenly took on a new tone. Several counselors admitted that their evaluation of humanity had been wrong. Others became defensive, arguing that humans were still too weak to deserve support. But even they could not deny what they had seen. The most unexpected support came from an ancient species called the Calthran. They had fought the Veteran many times in their history and understood what true courage looked like. The Calthran counselors stood and declared that humanity deserved the full support of the Galactic Council. "We have made a mistake," the Calthran said. "We have measured strength by weapons and technology. The species before you has shown us that strength is something deeper. Strength is the refusal to break. Strength is the decision to fight when surrender would be easier. We will support the humans." Other counselors followed. Ships began to be prepared. Weapons began to be loaded. Military support began to move toward New Terra. But most importantly, the perception of humanity changed. The weak species had shown the galaxy that they were not weak at all. A young human named David Owen had died in a communication station, but in dying, he had given humanity something far more valuable than weapons. He had given humanity respect. News reached Lucas Hart 3 days later. He read the report about David's mission and closed his eyes for a moment. Then he got back to work. The war was not over. The Veteran had not surrendered. But now, humanity was no longer alone. Now, the weak species had allies. Now, the relentless fury of humanity had the support of the entire galaxy, watching to see if they could complete their impossible task. The final battle began on a morning when the sky over New Terra burned with fire. Not the fire of Veteran bombardment, but the fire of human victory coming into view. Ships from the Galactic Council arrived in waves, cutting through the Veteran fleet like daggers through cloth. But Lucas Hart had made a decision about this final battle. The Calthran offered to lead the assault. The Council forces offered to handle the main attack. But Lucas politely refused both offers. "This is humanity's war," he said. "We will finish it with human hands. Your support means everything. But the victory must be ours." Alexander Price led the final assault. She commanded a force of human fighters that had been strengthened by captured Veteran technology and by the experience of 6 months of constant warfare. These were not the inexperienced pilots of 6 months ago. These were warriors who had learned to survive in the deadliest conditions. Nathan Gray led the ground assault. He commanded a force of soldiers who had nothing left to lose except their lives, and they had already accepted that possibility. They moved through the Veteran base like an unstoppable force, fighting with a discipline that had been forged in the crucible of desperation. The Veteran commander realized too late that something fundamental had changed. The humans were no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for victory. They were fighting because they had tasted the possibility of winning, and nothing would stop them. The Veteran communications were still compromised. Their hierarchy had never recovered from being disrupted. Their morale had been shattered by the revelation that they could actually lose. They had conquered hundreds of worlds, and they had never experienced defeat. Humans were teaching them what defeat felt like. In the space above New Terra, Alexander's fighters engaged the Veteran fleet one final time. The Veteran ships were superior in firepower, but the human pilots had learned something that the Veteran had never had to learn. They had learned how to fight when the odds were against them. They had learned how to think faster than their enemy. They had learned how to turn disadvantage into advantage. 3 human fighters fell for every Veteran ship destroyed. But the mathematics of the final battle worked in humanity's favor. The Galactic Council forces moved through the Veteran fleet like a scalpel, surgical and precise. The Veteran did not have the coordination to mount an effective defense. On the ground, Nathan's team fought their way into the Veteran command center. The structure was designed to resist assault, but it was designed for enemies who fought according to military doctrine. Nathan and his soldiers fought like animals protecting territory. They fought like humans who had survived on a harsh world. They fought without fear and without mercy. The final engagement lasted 3 hours. When it ended, the veteran commander was dead. The veteran fleet was broken. The veteran forces on New Terra were defeated. But more important than the military victory was what that victory meant. The weak species had won. The species that the Galactic Council had dismissed as expendable had fought the most advanced military in the known galaxy and emerged victorious. The war officially ended when the veteran began their retreat. Their remaining ships jumped to hyperspace, leaving New Terra and the surrounding colonies to the humans. The veteran had conquered the territory, but they could not occupy it, not with humans defending it. The celebration that followed was controlled and brief. They were dead to mourn. They were wounded to tend. There were ruins to rebuild. But for the first time in 6 months, humans could breathe without fear. Lucas Hart stood on an observation platform overlooking New Terra. The planet was scarred from the fighting. Entire cities had been destroyed. The population had been cut in half. But the humans had survived. The humans had won. Alexandra Price joined him at the observation platform. She was tired. Her face was thin from months of fighting on low rations. But her eyes were bright with the knowledge that she had lived to see victory. The Council has already started talking, Alexandra said. They want to make formal treaties with humanity. They want to establish defensive alliances. They want to trade. They treat us like equals now. We earned that, Lucas said. Not with words or diplomacy. We earned it with blood and stubbornness. Nathan Gray and Kevin Chun joined them a few hours later. Kevin had been in the underground bunkers for the entire war, working on the military technology that had kept humans alive. He looked like someone who had spent 6 months in darkness, because he had. The engineers want to start rebuilding the main city, Kevin said. They are asking what should be rebuilt first. Everything, Lucas said. We will rebuild everything. And when the Galactic Council sees what we build with our own hands, they will understand that humans are not weak because we do not have advanced technology. We are strong because we do not need advanced technology to survive. Over the next few weeks, the reality of human victory began to spread through the galaxy. The veteran, who had been thought of as invincible, had been defeated by humans. The implications were enormous. If humans could defeat the veteran, then maybe humans could become a real power in the galaxy. Maybe humans deserved to be treated as equals. Trade agreements began to flow in. Military alliances were formed. Human representatives were given more seats in the Galactic Council. Worlds that had been forbidden to humanity became open for colonization. But most importantly, the perception of humanity changed. Species that had looked down on humans with pity began to look at them with respect. Species that had dismissed human proposals in council meetings began to listen carefully to what humans had to say. 6 months after the final battle, Lucas stood on a platform overlooking the rebuilt New Terra with Alexandra, Nathan, Kevin, and thousands of human soldiers. They were raising a new flag over the city. It was a simple flag, showing the image of a human standing tall with stars around it. The veteran thought we were weak, Lucas said to the gathered crowd. The Galactic Council thought we were expendable. But we proved something different. We proved that strength is not measured in weapons. Strength is measured in will. Strength is measured in the refusal to give up. Strength is measured in the willingness to die for something you believe in. The crowd roared. Human soldiers, human civilians, people who had lost family and homes and futures to the war, roared with the sound of victory. In the mountains of New Terra, young humans began their military training. They were not training because they expected another war. They were training because they understood something fundamental. A species that trained its young in the ways of survival and determination would never again be weak. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Weakness is not about age or technology. Weakness is about spirit, about will, about the ability to keep fighting when everything tells you to surrender. Humanity had shown the galaxy what relentless fury really meant, and the galaxy would never forget.